You see, this is how it all started out. By now, the message should be clear. Vote Democrat or else. That was the message they were attempting to send throughout 2020, an election year running up to what would become a public discourse on Trump versus Biden, on left versus right. And the Democrats, particularly the radical left, wanted to make their position abundantly clear. And like in so many other cities, the city of Kenosha wound up looking like this, and this, and this, which, of course, CNN went on to assure us was a mostly peaceful protest. They were certainly trying to get the message across. But the one guy that didn't get the memo was this guy. This guy, Kyle H. Rittenhouse. Why would a 17-year-old man be walking around with an AR-15? Well, because this guy didn't want to end up looking like this guy or this guy. Two Kenosha store owners who wound up looking like that after being beaten by mostly peaceful protesters with their love sticks for the crime of defending their own storefronts. So this guy, this week, after having taken the lives of two criminal miscreant scumbags and blown off the bicep of another, was rightfully and righteously acquitted by a jury of his peers in Kenosha, Wisconsin. The left immediately reacted with their usual hysterics. My personal favorite being this one from actor Mark Ruffalo. We've got to come together to mourn the lives lost to the same racist system that devalues Black lives and devalued the lives of Anthony and JoJo. Let's ponder that for a minute. JoJo, of course, is the predatory miscreant scumbag on the left. JoJo, a pet name for a man who was convicted of ass raping 5 little boys between the ages of 9 and 11. That's right. 5 little boys between the ages of 9 and 11 were ass raped by Mark Ruffalo's precious little JoJo. The scumbag on the right was only, in quotation marks, a serial wife beater. This man beat, strangled, and threatened with a knife his domestic partner on no less than 4 occasions. But Mr. Ruffalo feels sad that we devalued their lives, neglecting to mention that both were in the process of attempting to kill, you guessed it, boys and girls, this guy. And were prevented from doing so only by the rifle that we see in the picture. So back to these two for a minute. The left, source of the Me Too movement, defending a serial wife beater. Again, guy that beat his wife, choked her, and threatened her with a knife on no less than 4 occasions. The left, constantly screaming when they need something passed, what about the children? Defending a guy that ass raped 5 children. Now, you and I both know that the left would not know a principled argument if it bit them in their sanctimonious little asses. But this rises to new heights of hypocrisy. In fact, I think at this point, the only thing that could make the hypocrisy more obvious would be for Joe Biden to do a press conference and say that while the events of Kenosha were tragic and that there were some violent criminal elements present, that we need to overlook that fact because there were very fine people on both sides. You think I'm kidding, but wait for it. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind, and they are guaranteed to choke you with a big, fat dose of the truth cock. Boys and girls, welcome back. It is time once again for the Sunday sermon. There we go. All that build up for a minor production hiccup. You guys can overlook that. I'm certainly going to, but we're not going to act like it ever happened. Everybody in for the drum roll. Here we go. I'm sorry, man. I had it queued up to another Doom band. Morgan Thus just came out with another album, and it made my workout playlist this week. That's what I had it queued up to on the iTunes file. But now we are back to the usual bumper music. Red Desert from the smoldering embers of Minneapolis, Minnesota, another city that fell victim to the mostly peaceful riots of 2020. Name of the track is Older No Wiser, because every week I do this thing, I get a little bit older, and every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. But you got to admit, man, that bumper music is a fucking jam, is it not? I'm in a pretty good mood, man. Got my bottle of Liquid Enthusiasm, sporting the Impaler shirt this week. That's right, Impaler, with, of course, Vlad himself on the shirt. This is available from Paul Wagner, formerly of Operation Werewolf. Go check out Paul Wagner's website. He's got a couple of things on there, some merchandise purchases, et cetera. I thought about throwing on the Right Wing Extremist shirt this week. I think I'll save that for next week. Because I think my right-wing extremism is perfectly evident to anybody, especially the guys that have been here. While we're letting the bumper music roll on, man, let's do a real quick roll call, see who's on board early. I know we got Joey, the Sultan of Sarcasm. Roman and Carrie from Opium Tales are going to be catching the replay. Joel Allen Jackson on board. Brother James Pearson. My LEO brethren. I love you, man. I love you. It's always good to see you. Please hug the wife for me and tell her I'm looking forward to some more of that homemade salsa. Oh, my God. Good stuff. Good stuff. Brother Dennis Weimer, OG Reverence Rangers, for all my Reverence Rangers, my prophets of doom, and my sinner sisters out there. Speaking of sinner sisters, my beloved Oksana on board. Hello, pretty lady. My goodness. Yes, indeed. Who am I missing? Brother Aaron Ton tuned in. Jude, I told you were going to like the opener, man. That whole very good people on both sides that's been ringing in my head all week. Brother Oz on board. Tom on board 3 weeks in a row. George Williams. All right, George, good to see you, man. Did you see what just happened in Waukesha? No, I did not. Message me in the comments, but I'm willing to check it out. I got a lot of stuff to cover, but definitely message me in the comments. Maybe I'll even do a brief sidebar. We'll dip over and we'll find out what happened. But yeah, George, just let me know, man. Let me know over in the comments. So anyway, we had a lot of stuff to cover this week, man. Obviously, the Rittenhouse acquittal. We can all breathe a sigh of relief. We can all cheer. The rule of law has been defended. The law of self-defense, the principle of self-defense has been defended. You know, on that principle of self-defense, man, it's a birthright. This isn't difficult. However, as we discussed last week, the power of propaganda is something to behold, man. Absolutely something to behold. The good news about it is you can tell immediately, without even having to engage these numbskulls in conversation. You can tell immediately who actually watched the trial, who actually looked at alternative media, and who followed the sound bites from CNN and MSNBC for the duration of the trial. You can tell immediately. You don't even have to get into a conversation with them. Not that such a conversation would be productive in the first place, but there's absolutely no point in engaging. The minute they start spewing these talking points and these falsehoods, all of which were debunked at trial, on camera and broadcast live to the entire world via the internet, they did not want to take the time. And if they did not want to take the time, they have no right to that opinion. That is a truism that has always rubbed me the wrong way. Well, you know, I've got a right to my opinion. No, you fucking don't. No, you don't. You don't have a right to an opinion. You have a right to an educated opinion, or you have the right to sit down and have a nice warm cup of shut the fuck up. If you are, here's the example. You ask me my opinion on crypto. I'm going to tell you, I know precisely fuck all about crypto. And that's my opinion, because I haven't done the research, because I haven't put it in. I put $20 into Dogecoin just to let it sit there as a joke. and it's worth, I don't know, several $100s now. But I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. It was a joke. What is your opinion on crypto? Well, I can give you my opinion on the political ramifications of it because that's something that's in my wheelhouse. But if you ask me about which Bitcoin, Ethereum, what should I invest in? How long should I hold it? Should I buy on the dips and all this? I know fuck all about that and therefore have no right to an opinion. And I am possessed of the intellectual honesty and ideological consistency to say so. We're not fortunate to live in a world full of people that share that sentiment. And it's really, really showing this week with regard to the fallout of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Brother Casey Olaf Tellison, nor did anyone Google the statutes involved. That is also true. And Casey, I'm glad you jumped in because you're just in time, brother. I'm glad you're here. And if you can get a hold of Dusty, because Aaron, if you're here, you need to get a hold of Dusty and get our holiday turkey over to those guys so we can keep the tradition alive. Good time to give the sponsor shout outs. First of all, Casey and Dusty Tellison from Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. They have smoked my holiday turkey every year since I've been in the Inland Northwest. They are rolling out, not this week with the Viking Longship, because obviously their usual Thursday is going to be Thanksgiving this week. They're not going to be out there. But the Viking Longship, the big smoker trailer, is going to be out at American Gun and Pawn every other Thursday from 11 until they run out. Get there before they run out. I started to say treat it like a George Floyd riot and just bum rush the place. But then I remembered you're dealing with a Marine combat vet, which is another shout out that I want to give to Casey. If you have not picked up your copy of Freaks of a Feather from Latop Press out of Spokane, Washington, it is available on Amazon. He is getting kudos from across the board. Not only is he getting kudos from across the board, he actually got to sit and have dinner, and I'm assuming what must have been an amazing conversation with General Mad Dog Mattis, another Inland Northwest Marine. So Casey, I'm really fucking proud of you. But anyway, go see him, get the book, go check out the barbecue. Aaron, get in touch with Dusty and make it happen. Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. And of course, my good friend Roman. We've been friends since the 80s, man, over at opiumtales.com. They are the erotic pinups and portraits people. You can check out his artwork of very, very beautiful naked women and his testosterone-driven commentary. You know I'm all about that. So opiumtales.com. He's been banned from the Twitter format now from Jack Boots Dorsey, but he does still have the website up and running. So opiumtales.com. Go check those guys out. And yes, Casey, you were absolutely right. Nobody bothered to look up the valid statutes. Literally 8 seconds of effort would save all of this. But again, it is the power of the propaganda. These people think themselves informed. I've been in exchanges on threads where it's like, well, I didn't need to watch the trial because I'm going to reputable news sources. Your reputable news sources have you convinced of a lot of things that are patently untrue. And we're going to get into a lot of those things now. But right out of the starting gate, let's all just take a minute. It's like I've been telling you guys on the no black pills principle. Don't let this get overwhelming. Things look dark, but we are past the tipping point and we are fucking winning. And that victory, my beloved Oksana, earlier, we were the first. She was the first person to speak with me. We were communicating. I was on my way back to Spokane for like a day trip, just in and out. And now I'm back in Prineville. But we were communicating on the phone when the verdict came through. She was the first one to give me the news. She was elated. I was elated. I was very happy to be able to share that moment with a like mind and a kindred spirit who could appreciate the enormity of what that decision really, really meant. Before we go any further down any of these things, really quick, I do want to do the rabbit hole this week. That's right, Ryan's rabbit hole. You guys know my bro, Ryan Jenkins. He is the guy that opened the door for me to get into the crane business, allowed me to change my life. He's been a friend of mine for decades. And the segment has become very, very popular. So now we'll give you a little applause sound effect. Go ahead and crank that up. Ryan's rabbit hole. Yes, indeed, boys and girls. Ryan's rabbit hole. We're going to go we're going to go with that segment. Every week, we go down a little Viva Referencia Obscura rabbit hole with either an individual or a phenomena or an historical event of some sort. Ryan is a repository of the esoteric and the obscure. This one, sometimes I got to pull him back from the brink a little bit. I got to full disclosure, Ryan, not trying to put you on blast here, but sometimes I do have to pull Ryan back a little bit because it's something that I can appreciate. You want to try to keep it in the zone. You want to try to keep it above Larry the Cable Guy, but below Dennis Miller. That's like the zone that you're trying to get into. And some days he goes straight past. Some days he goes straight past Dennis Miller and into some quantum theoretical stuff that I'm just looking at. It's going like, look, dude, this is a me and you coffee discussion, but maybe a little too deep. But this week, man, he hit on a very, very fascinating individual. And so the rabbit hole this week is going to be dedicated to a gentleman by the name of Joseph Barrel. Now, there is some dispute about the pronunciation of that name, but I'll give you the spelling so you can look it up for yourself. He was known to his airborne division as Jumpin' Joe. Joseph Barrel, Beyrle. He is the only combat vet, only American combat vet to have the distinction of having served in both the American and the Soviet armies. And when I say Soviet, I mean Soviet. It was World War II. The Russians were Soviet communists. FDR saw Stalin as an ally. That's its own. No, we're not going to go any more tangential than that. But yes, that murderous genocidal fuck Joseph Stalin was considered an ally against a German with a funny mustache. You guys may remember the story. Anyway, Joseph Barrel was captured behind enemy lines. He was a paratrooper with the 101st. He was captured behind enemy lines by the Germans. And the Germans took him off to the Stalag, a prison camp. He had 2 attempts to escape where he got caught. They drug his ass back to the camp. They beat him. They tortured him. They did what you would expect from members of the SS. The 3rd time he was able to escape, and he got out and he made a break for it, and he made it over to Soviet lines, and he got scooped up by the Soviets, who, of course, at that point, keep in mind, we were allies, right? This is before the Cold War where everything got a little bristly, but we were allies, and he was picked up by a Soviet armored division. And because he knew how to run a tank, because he knew how to do all of the things associated with armored division tactics, he got scooped up by the Soviets, and he made a definitive impact and basically just really made a name for himself as a soldier with the Soviets. The Russians adopted him like a brother. They loved him. His ferocity was just something to be beheld. And it again, after 7 months being held in 3 different stalags and busting out and getting beaten and getting tortured, getting scooped up by the Russians, man, he wanted some fucking payback. I'm sure he would have been more than happy to get back to American lines. But when he broke, he went the other direction and he got scooped up by the Soviets. This guy is a product of the state of Michigan. He is buried in Arlington National Cemetery. And the story, again, I know right now you're already, if you haven't heard of the guy already, you're going, wow, that sounds really fun. Dude, I'm not even beginning to do it justice here. So Joseph Barrel, Jumpin' Joe Barrel, last name spelled Beyrle, Jumpin' Joe Barrel. Fascinating story, an American story, a fascinating war story, a fascinating testament to the strength of the human spirit that is present in precious few individuals these days. There was a lot more common back then, but even then, this was above and beyond, and a definitive example. So Jumpin' Joe Barrel, look it up. That is Ryan's rabbit hole for the week. So rolling across the bottom there, you will see my other social media things. I think I have 2 people on board, should have 2 people on board right now that sort of were passive participants in a conversation between me and a friend of mine over in Spokane the other night. They got up, and this is something, before I get into all the other stuff, this is it's a greeting to the 2 new fans if they're on board. And thank you for being here. I know you bookmarked the page. Hopefully you're at least seeing the replay if you're not seeing it live. Thank you. But what it highlights is what I am consistently trying to get across to all of you here. The thing that changes the world is not always, and in fact, it's very rarely huge events that really change the world. The world changes, particularly on a socio-political spectrum, as the result of 1,000 little conversations between 1,000 little individuals, ordinary people, working class people, the ones at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder or the middle class that are actually the ones that make it work. When they speak, the word of mouth is the spoken word is stronger than the strongest man. And it's by those conversations. You want to know how the Soviet Empire fell? The Soviet Empire fell for a lot of reasons. They couldn't keep up with Reagan's defense spending. Anytime the excesses of communism manifest themselves, it's bound to collapse. All these things played into the factor. But ultimately, what brought it down from within were people talking. The Soviet government, as all authoritarian regimes do, completely controlled the media. You had TASS, you had Pravda. And back then there was no internet. Not until the latest days of the Soviet Empire were there even fax machines, and they controlled the radio transmissions, and they were constantly surveilling people. And it was that way throughout the communist bloc. But what killed it was a million little conversations, because everybody knew. It's like that Orwellian. It's like the Orwellian paradigm as opposed to the Huxleyan paradigm. At least in Orwell's world in 1984, the people knew there was that overall specter of bleakness. The people knew that they were oppressed. Unlike the Huxleyan paradigm where they revel in their servitude, they knew that something was wrong. They would never speak it, but deep down they knew. In their guts, they would play along, they would go through the motions, they knew something was wrong. And a million small conversations are gradually what started to pull brick by brick by brick by brick out of the power structure of the Politburo. And that is what brings down authoritarian regimes. Well, boys and girls, I'm telling you, that's how we're going to win, because we're in a very similar paradigm right now. The corporate media is entirely controlled. They are entirely working through the system. Social media, he says, ironically, through several social media formats, is tightening up. They are tightening the noose by the day. Any day now, I could get pulled from any of the big ones: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook Live. You guys have been around for me to go through 30-day Facebook bans. You guys have seen that before, which is why I went to YouTube and Twitter, and then I got cut from Twitter. It can happen, right? The one thing they can't stop is ordinary conversation. Me talking to you, you talking to the next guy. And knowledge, you may have heard me say it before. If you didn't, you're getting ready for it right now. Knowledge is the absolute best gift that you can give to another human being. It's the absolute best gift, because it's the only gift that you can give to another human being that you don't have to give up anything in the process. If I have knowledge and I give you that knowledge, I retain the knowledge. And you can give that knowledge to 5 other people, and I can go on and give that knowledge to 5 other people, who can in turn give it to 5 more other people, and it expands exponentially. And that is how changes are made, and that is how we're fucking winning. So drop that black pill, man. Drop it. Put it down. It's time to embrace the fact that while we may have, we may, and certainly do, still have a hell of a fight ahead of us, we are winning. Take that momentum and hang on to it with a tenacity that befits something that your life depends on, because it very well may. All right. So now that I'm going to step down from this soapbox real quick, and we're going to get on into, let me see. We're going to get on into some of these tabs that I wanted to work with right off the bat. First tweet. Let me go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and pop this up. This was in my banner section, and I may have to post a higher resolution version of it. That right there is a table from the World Health Organization. Now, I want you to take a good look. What it details there is a history of all of the different vaccines for all of the different major pandemics and all of the different pandemic capable viruses. You've got your usual suspects there. You've got smallpox, you've got diphtheria, you've got all of these things. And I want you to take a look down the line. I will be posting a higher resolution version on the fan page, but look down at the bottom, the COVID vaccine. We're in 3 digits and 4 digits, all the way down to about the middle of the page on all of these viruses with regard to the side effects of the vaccines. I want you to take a look at the world leader down there at the bottom, and that is the COVID vaccine. How did we wind up there? My goodness, however, did we wind up with that many side effects? And yet, the mainstream media just doesn't seem to want to cover it. Isn't that the damnedest thing? I'm scrolling right now and I'm talking over my scrolling because I'm trying to find a particular entry that I had, not just from that table, not just the one that was into that table, but here we go. Here it is. Found it. The FDA. Let me click that table off right now. Still learning my way around StreamYard. Again, we're very low tech around here. I don't have a producer. It's just me and a camera and a microphone and a laptop. Sorry, guys. I do what I can. But the FDA this week, we're going to address, our first bullet point is going to be the Pfizer Pfuckups. And of course, you have to spell Pfuckups with a silent P as well. Pfizer Pfuckups. So again, there's nothing to worry about the vaccine, but the FDA struggled this week and made an attempt at hiding the COVID-19 vaccine documents. They want them put away for 76 years. And in fact, a number of those documents they were able to get clearance for to get them hidden from the public for 76 years. 76 years seems an awful long time for something that is completely beneficial and absolutely fucking harmless. Maybe because the 91 pages that the FDA did produce and release to the public reveals that Pfizer, after just 2.5 months of vaccine use, received 25,957 reports of nervous system disorders. Let me say that again. Nearly 26,000 reports of nervous system disorders after just 2.5 months of vaccine use. Now, of course, I'm looking at the tweet, and the tweet is being fact-checked as misleading. And here's what Jack Boots Dorsey has to say about it. Misleading. Learn why health officials consider COVID vaccines safe for most people. This tweet can't be replied to, shared, or liked. Interesting. But again, they're being totally transparent. They're certainly not trying to censor ideas. This is coming from Aaron Siri on Substack.com. If you haven't gotten onto Substack, by the way, do. They are not a sponsor of the program. However, I am subscribed to a number of people on Substack, including Mr. Siri, including Matt Taibbi, including Glenn Greenwald. Why Taibbi and Greenwald? Because they are from the left, essentially. They started out not exactly hard leftists, but definitely strong liberal leanings. But they kept their ideological consistency, their intellectual honesty, and more importantly, their spine and their balls. So I am a lot more prone to take the word of someone like that, even as I run it through my critical thinking filter, and they are phenomenal writers. Glenn Greenwald, as you may remember, broke the Edward Snowden case and basically laid open all of the things that Clapper wound up lying to Congress about spying on the American people. Anyway, let's get back to Mr. Siri. FDA produces the first 91 pages of documents from Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine file. 2 months and 1 day after it was sued, and close to 3 months since it licensed Pfizer's COVID vaccine, the FDA released the first round of documents. While it is for the scientists to properly analyze, let me share one observation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's get down to the raw numbers here, shall we? And I bookmarked it again, but I'm scrolling. Lots of stuff was redacted from the report. Big surprise there. Again, transparency. As for the volume of reports in the 2.5 months following the EUA, Pfizer received a total of, are you ready for this? Brace yourselves. I hope you're taking notes. Pfizer received a total of 42,086 reports containing, it gets better, 158,893 what is regarded as events involving vaccine side effects. Most of these reports were from the United States and disproportionately involved women. Let me say that again, disproportionately involved women, 29,914 versus 9,182 provided by men, and those between 31 and 50 years old. 25,957 of the events were classified as nervous system disorders. Females between the ages of 30 and 51. Nervous system disorders. That sounds familiar. Aaron Siri on Substack, AARONSIRI on Substack.com. Go do, again, I'm not your fucking guru. Don't take my word for anything. At the end of the day, I'm just a crane operator with some opinions. I'm just bringing you the truth as I see it, but fact check everyone, myself included. Anybody who tells you that their way is the only way, walk away. End of statement, done. But look it up yourself. It is disturbing. Besides the nervous system disorders in women between the ages of 31 and 50, and there is one person that I'm speaking to specifically, and she knows who she is. Nervous system disorders, women between the ages of 31 and 50. Nervous system disorders, women between the ages of 31 and 50. Second most common side effect reported, reproductive disorders. Again, we could go full Alex Jones tinfoil hat with it. I'm not going to go down that alley. But Pfizer, keep in mind, this is just in the first 91 pages that were released by the FDA, and they have 76 years to release the rest of it. First 91 pages have already put us at 26,000 reports and 158,000 events. And these are the ones that they're admitting to. You've seen no coverage of this in the mainstream press, nor will you. Why? Rachel Maddow, brought to you by Pfizer. Brian Stelter, reliable sources, brought to you by Pfizer. You guessed it. It is amazing, again, getting back to how the left has a complete absence of principles. Weren't they the guys that used to lament the power of corporations controlling the media, controlling the flow of information that we received? And now, here is Pfizer, obviously controlling the flow of information that we're receiving. Here is Big Pharma getting busted again, covering up and lying. I should point out, for those of you that don't already know, Pfizer Pharmaceuticals paid the largest settlement, the largest legal settlement in the history of the United States a number of years back. A settlement to the tune of $2 billion plus. That's billion with a B. And they paid it for what? Bribing doctors for the purpose of suppressing test results that reflected negatively on one of their products. In other words, hush money. We know it's poisoning people. We know it's harmful, but shut the fuck up. Now, I want you to imagine the product that they paid the settlement for did not have the full faith and backing of the United States government. Now, the drug that they're covering up for does. And they're trying to mandate it for you, and they're trying to mandate it for your children. FDA is trying to clear for 5 to 11-year-olds. Pfizer's cold busted again. And everyone who enables them, as far as I am concerned, is culpable. 100% culpable. This is great. On page 6, due to the large numbers of spontaneous adverse event reports received for the product, Pfizer has prioritized the processing of serious cases. Yeah. Nervous system disorders. That's pretty fucking serious. Reproductive disorders. Pretty fucking serious. But again, what do I know? I'm just a crane operator with some opinions at the end of the day. Something to behold, isn't it? So anyway, yes, from the Pfizer Pfuckups department, those are your 2 bullet points. I want you to grab these stats and I want you to go back and do your homework. That's your homework assignment. All of my Reverends Rangers out there, my Prophets of Doom, my Sinner Sisters, you now have your homework assignment. Take those reports that I gave you, dig deeper, and come to your own conclusions. Not your fucking guru. I'm just the Reverend. So that was from the Pfizer Pfuckups department. Now let's get into the second set of bullet points, and we're going to bring it home. The most pressing event of the week, the one that I opened with. This is coming from the how the fuck did we even get here department, and that is the verdict in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse. Anybody got a beverage handy? This is my liquid enthusiasm, my caffeinated lemonade. You guys know how I roll. Anybody who's got a beverage handy, raise a glass with me to Kyle. Clink to Kyle. Let's jump back in, shall we? Predictably, the media is doing what they have done. They are doubling down. We all know the facts of the case. I spent an hour and a half on it last week, and a number of commentators, bloggers, podcasters, far better than myself, have spent tons of time on it. Tim Pool has been on this thing with the tenacity of a pit bull that's been starved in the desert for 6 months. Andrew Clavin has been on it. Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro. Did I mention my wife is a doctor and I'm wearing a yarmulke? Ben Shapiro. He has been on this thing with the tenacity of a porn star getting to do an orgy shoot after a 6-month dry spell. He is after it, man. They're all after it. Everyone in the independent press, everyone on social media, all of these people who have actually been paying attention to the case. Again, when I say I am a crane operator with some opinions, that is my job. I am a crane operator, and I've been doing 10-hour days and coming in and lifting and then pushing it into what should be my sleep hours, watching 2 to 3 hours a night of the replay of the actual trial proceedings on YouTube. You know, the live stream is there. It's there in its entirety, unedited, unexpurgated, and coming from my perspective, unlubricated. Bang. And there's literally no excuse for anyone not to know exactly what went on. But people are lazy, and people are weak, and people are committed to their narrative. A white kid defending a car ownership owned by East Indian immigrants shoots 3 white people, and this becomes a public dialogue on white supremacy. Somebody explain to me how this works. Again, they are doubling down on the white supremacist narrative. They are doubling down on the white vigilante narrative. They are doubling down on the racist justice system department, because if it had been a black kid, he would have been found guilty, yada, yada, yada. Look, I can only speak for myself, but I think I can speak for my congregation out there. All of my Sinner Sisters, all of my Reverends Rangers, my Prophets of Doom. I think I can speak for all of us together to say that if Kyle Rittenhouse would have been Kylese Washington X and shot 3 white predatory miscreant scumbags who were trying to kill him, I know I'd be down for the motherfucker. Everybody here on this feed would be down for the motherfucker. And you guys know it. We all know it. But again, they're committed to the narrative. But they're slipping. Their numbers are small. They're trying to control the perception. They had to run damage control when a freelancer working for MSNBC was following the jury bus, trying to dox the jurors. He said, I just wanted interviews after the verdict. Okay, well then wait for the verdict, Sparky. But no, they wanted their personal information because they wanted to dox them. It was an attempt at witness intimidation. It was naked. And I applaud the courage of those jurors in Kenosha, because they didn't have them sequestered. They had them right there in the courthouse, and they could hear everything going outside, the screams, the protests, the fist fights, everything that erupted outside of that courthouse. The jury got to hear it. They got to hear it through the blacked out windows. They couldn't see it. They got to hear it through the blacked out windows of their buses when the jury bus was taking them back to the parking lots, and they had to live in fear of people showing up at their fucking house. And what did they do? They still did the right thing. They requested exhibit after exhibit. They went over with a fine-tooth comb the actual letter of the law, and they came to the conclusion. And what did the media do with that? What they always do. They doubled down on the narrative. Further proof of white supremacy. The judge was a white supremacist. The jurors were all white supremacists. If it had been a black kid, the cops would have shot him, and even if he made it to trial, the jury would have hung him, blah, 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 blah. But here's how they're taking it one step further. This is the new narrative coming out of the Rittenhouse verdict, is the danger of the precedent. The New York Times, from the New York Times, also known as fish wrap and birdcage liner. When it comes to self-defense, the prosecution has a heavier burden. Now, I'm just going to read the first paragraph real quick. For many Americans, the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse on all charges on Friday was a vindication of an innocent, if not heroic, teenager with good intentions. For others, it was a brutal disappointment, further evidence that the courts give a white man a pass for their actions. But for legal scholars, it was not a surprise. Once Mr. Rittenhouse claimed that he acted in self-defense when he shot 3 men, killing 2, during unrest following the police shooting of a black man in Kenosha, Wisconsin. They're going to beat that to death. The onus was on the prosecution to prove otherwise. The onus was on the prosecution to prove otherwise. Okay. So that's basically he's innocent and you have to prove that he's guilty. That's the burden of proof being on the accuser. That is a legal principle that goes all the way back, arguably, to the Magna fucking Carta. How many times has fucking been inserted into the term Magna Carta? The Magna fucking Carta. And at the very least, it's the founding of the United States. But now these things are being lamented. Why is the burden of proof so high? Why do we have to prove that he defended himself? The acquittal points to a wide berth the legal system gives to defendants who say they acted out of fear, even if others around them were also afraid. See, it's a terrible thing that we have to prove that a person who says they were afraid were legitimately afraid. I wonder how thinking people would respond if this burden, if this standard were applied to, say, rape victims. Prove that you stabbed this man because he had ripped your clothes off. He had chased you down the block. He had punched you in the face. He had assaulted you. He had told you what he had for you, where he was going to put it, and what he was going to do to your kids when you're done. But we have to prove that you were in legitimate fear for your life, and that's a bad thing. You should have to prove to us that you were in legitimate fear for your life. And who's going to set the bar for that one? That's where they're going as a result of this. As I said last week, Kyle Rittenhouse is not on trial. We are. The right to self-defense is what is on trial. And further, from the New York Times, let's roll that one more time on the bullet point. To paramilitary groups, Rittenhouse verdict means vindication. Also from Fish Wrap, Birdcage Liner, New York Times. In Rittenhouse verdict, militia groups, paramilitary groups see vindication. He had no connection to any militia groups. The media has known this from day one. They tried to connect him to militia. They tried to connect him to white supremacist organizations. Hell, they even tried to connect him to the Proud Boys. Because a couple of Proud Boys in a bar said, hey, man, we want to get a picture with you while you're out. They tried to connect him to all of these, and they could find nothing. They alluded to it, the prosecution did, a number of times during the trial, to paint Kyle in that light, but it didn't take because they had no tangible evidence to back that up. But this is the narrative that they're going with. White supremacist vigilante, and none of the facts of the case support that. Nothing. Literally no physical evidence whatsoever, even tangential circumstantial evidence to support that white supremacist narrative. But that's what they're selling. And unfortunately, their ever shrinking customer base is buying it. More evidence that we're winning. All the mainstream media outlets, the legacy media outlets that are selling this story, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, the big three from back in the day, back when we had, turn handles and we had to get up and change the channel ourselves. Some of you old people remember that. All of the legacy media sources who are carrying this narrative are losing ratings. MSNBC is completely in the shitter. CNN went for how many months without having one of their night programs crack 1 million viewers, right? Bloggers and YouTubers, much to Brian Stelter's discontent as he lamented on one of his programs, I have YouTubers that are getting more views than this show, and this is dangerous. Why? Because people don't fucking believe you anymore, fat boy. Because of stuff like this. You're trailing off. And you've heard me use this analogy before. It's like a dying star. The left is like a dying star. What happens when a star dies? It gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's the size of the radical left right now. It keeps getting smaller and smaller because all the mainstream liberals are jumping ship. Fox's ratings are through the roof. Fox is another thing entirely. I don't want to go off on that. But look where their ratings are. People are done with the legacy media. They're done. And at the very least, they're done with the left-leaning and more radical by the day legacy media, CNN, MSNBC, etc. The left is dying. And as that star dies, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And the left is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But at the same time, what happens? It gets more and more dense, as in circling the wagons to protect the narrative. And it gets more and more heated and volatile. So yes, we're winning. All right. But we're not out of the woods yet. Because when that thing finally collapses in on itself, it either turns into a black hole, sucks everything in around it, or it goes supernova and fucking explodes. And either way, it doesn't end well within a certain radius for anyone involved. But the left is dying, and they keep doubling down on their narrative. Here's one thing that I will say that absolutely impressed the hell out of me coming out of this thing was the near absence of riots. There were riots. Don't get me wrong. There were definitely riots. CBS News riot declared in Portland. Of course, Portland. What did I say? When first Facebook post when this thing broke, Portland and Seattle would be on fire before the night was over. Riot declared in Portland as Kyle Rittenhouse acquittal sparks some protests. Well, sparks some protests is a nice way of saying that they assaulted police officers. They busted up storefronts, set buildings on fire, and tried to attack the federal courthouse up there again. It sparked some protests. In California, a flash mob of about 80 suspects hit a Nordstrom store. What the fuck does that have to do with racial justice in Kenosha? But a flash mob hit a Nordstrom's. That wasn't even, I'm not even going to chalk that up to that being a Rittenhouse riot. That was opportunism. So again, the near absence of riots is what I'm really pumping up here. In the UK, the Evening Standard, the Evening Standard, rioting in U.S. as Kyle Rittenhouse verdict divides nation, but they keep showing the one riot in Portland and a couple of things, looters breaking into stores and stuff in Chicago. Yes, it happened. We knew it was going to happen, but I'm actually pretty impressed with the small numbers in the groups of people that are actually rioting, the minimal impact of the riots. I was expecting major flaming shit in every major city in the United States, and we didn't get that. Why? Few reasons. One, it's wintertime. It's fucking cold. People are reluctant to get out. Two, it's not an election year. So a lot of the people who financed and facilitated the riots that plagued the country throughout 2020. We're not going to get behind this. And also, those same people know that they've got the midterms coming up. See, the 2020 riots you can facilitate and finance because that's going to reflect badly on Trump, and you want Darth Cheeto out of the White House. Anything that comes down now is coming back to Biden. And you really think Biden can afford to take a hit like that right now? You notice they paraded his cadaver ass up there, and the only thing he had to say, they had Kamala say, well, more work needs to be done. But they were very careful. They were parsing their words. Biden's first response was, well, the jury has spoken and we have to live with that. Yeah, his handlers told that fucking cadaver exactly what words and what temperament and what incitement he better stay away from. Later, he came out, he didn't, but his handlers typed up a little missive that the verdict, angered and concerned some people in the country, myself included, but he ended it with, we have to respect the decision of the jury. Yeah, it's not an election year, so pushing and financing and facilitating these riots isn't going to work out. And even if it had been an election year, it would have hung on Biden. And the last thing the left needs right now is to take another hit. With Biden's ratings in the shitter and Kamala's even lower. But they went down that road in the media. Here's just a real quick Google search. I didn't do DuckDuckGo. Rittenhouse precedent. Rittenhouse precedent. Just 2 words. Throw that into Google, and here's the results that it comes back with. PBS, does the Rittenhouse acquittal set a precedent? Upfront recap, no precedent in Kyle Rittenhouse case. Rittenhouse verdict, this from the GRIA. Rittenhouse verdict sets new legal precedent on white privilege. Yahoo.com picked that up, recast it. Hundreds when it comes to, and that's where I picked up when it comes to self-defense, the prosecution has a heavier burden. This is what they're coming out with, is that this dangerous precedent that's been set. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I think this dangerous precedent that's been set by this verdict is the third and final reason why there were so few fucking riots. Because the signal that it sent to this maggot mob, to the maggot militia, to these predatory miscreants, is that, hey, there may be consequences for your actions now. And I noticed that the police took their cues from that as well, because the big protest that took place in New York City was walled around by police officers. They weren't letting it get out of hand. They weren't going to let it build up any momentum. They learned their fucking lesson, because the last thing they wanted was 20 more Kyle Rittenhouses by the time the sun came up. Signal transmitted, message fucking received. Not saying it was the main factor, certainly. Not saying it was the only factor by a damn sight. But it was definitely a factor. They got the message. Let me tell you what it reminded me of, and I was having this discussion. With one of my main man Reverend's Rangers up in Spokane. Essentially, the signal that we're sending them is Mike Tyson and the signal that he sent to Holyfield. We've gone over here before that the left declared war on the West back in the 1960s, and we just didn't take them seriously. But now it's all come to fruition. You guys may or may not remember the second bout between Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson. But let me tell you a little bit about it. Those of you who watched and those of you who are familiar with it, you will get the reference. You may disagree with the conclusion that I'm coming to about the fight itself, but it's going to be real hard for you to shoot down the idea of how this fight works as an analogy and a metaphor. See, Evander Holyfield had beaten Tyson the first time. Beaten him through skill, drew him into the deep water and fucking drowned his ass. There wasn't any doubt about it. So Tyson was looking to avenge himself, and Holyfield came into the fight. Now, keep in mind, Holyfield Oh, praised as a born again Christian and a wholesome, upstanding individual. He was anything but. Praised as the good guy. He was wearing the white hat, and Tyson clearly wearing the black hat. And so we go into the fight. And Evander comes out hard and heavy, and the one thing that he's doing is closing distance between him and Tyson instead of using his height and reach to his advantage and keeping Tyson at distance. He actually came close to Tyson. Not only did he come close to Tyson, but he dropped inside of Mike's range and came up quickly over and over and over again. There's only one reason why a boxer with a height and reach advantage, the likes of which Holyfield had over Tyson, comes inside the range and drops levels, putting himself squarely in the trajectory of the most dangerous left hook in boxing history. There's only one reason to bring your head down into that range, and that's if you're coming up to headbutt, which he did time after time after time through the first 2 rounds of the fight. Holyfield was the good guy wearing the white hat, and Tyson, oh my goodness, what a bad, bad man wearing the black hat. That's how the sports media pushed it. That's how the fans saw it, because they didn't have eyes for the subtlety of what was actually going on in here. They just saw that Holyfield was winning and Holyfield was the good guy, and they went with that. Tyson wasn't having it, especially after repeated headbutts by the second round had put a cut over his eye. And he appealed to the referee. He appealed to the referee, who, as it happens, is a judge. Mills Lane, Maximum Mills. So he more or less appealed to the courts. Mills, you got to do something. This guy's headbutting me. Mills wouldn't see it or couldn't see it. Maybe Holyfield was just that slick. I wasn't in the ring. It's real easy to sit outside the ring and armchair quarterback this shit. But Mills was in there and he didn't see it. So Tyson appealed to the courts. He appealed to Maximum Mills, judge/referee Lane. Man, you got to do something about this. They're painting this guy as the good guy, but he's fighting dirty as fuck. And I'm trying to stay within the rule book. I could brutalize this son of a bitch, but I'm trying to stay within the rule book. He's fighting dirty as fuck, and now he's cut my eye. I need you to intercede here. But Mills didn't. And most of the fans couldn't see what was going on. So come the third round, Tyson stepped out of his corner without his mouthpiece in. You see, Tyson was street. Holyfield liked to do the street thing, but he wasn't street. Tyson was fucking street. And so he came out for the third round without his mouthpiece. Mills looked, saw him without the mouthpiece. Hey, Mike, put your mouthpiece back in. Puts his mouthpiece back in. It was an omen of things to come. Because here come Holyfield, same as he'd been doing, ducking inside the range of that left hook and coming up with the headbutt. But now, with that headbutt, Tyson can wrap him up, and now their heads are side by side. And after about 2 or 3 more of those intentional headbutts, Mike Tyson took it upon himself to say, all right, motherfucker, you want to make this a street fight? I'll show you a fucking street fight. And he bit Holyfield's ear. See, I thought we showed up for a boxing match and you wanted to make it a street fight, and everybody else is singing your praises for being such a great boxer when you're fighting dirty as fuck and they either can't see it or don't want to see it because you're the good guy. So now it's a street fight, motherfucker, and you picked it. So Tyson bit his ear. Holyfield freaked the fuck out. Immediately says something to Mills about it. Mills didn't see that one either. Hey, wait a minute. What's going on here? So Holyfield comes in again. Yet again with the duck under and come up with the headbutt. Trying to work that cut he's already opened up. And again, putting that head right next to Tyson's. And this time, Tyson bit down for keeps and took off a chunk of fucking Holyfield's ear. Now, Holyfield freaked out and stepped back, holding his ear, and then took a run straight at Mike Tyson. You can go back and watch the video. He took a run straight at him. Like, man, I'm going to... And you see Tyson, that classic cool, like ice, hands in place. He knew what he'd done. And if Holyfield was about to take it street, he was more than ready for that. He didn't flinch. He didn't move. He bit that ear. Holyfield spins around and comes charging for him, and he's right there waiting for it. And Holyfield picked up the vibe real quick and stopped himself before he ran into the middle of that hellfire again. Bart, what does this have to do with anything? I'll tell you exactly what it has to do with anything. We, on the right, as part of the working class, as conservatives, as ordinary, on the daily grind American citizens, the media has painted us somehow as the bad guy because we've done some bad things or their interpretation of what bad things are. So we're the bad guy. And the left, well, they're the guys wearing the white hats. They're the ones to be celebrated. They're the model fucking citizens. Only they've come out and they fought dirty. And half of the people in the crowd watching can't see that they're fighting dirty because they don't have eyes for it. And the other half, well, they don't even care if they're fighting dirty so long as they're winning. And we have been on the defensive, trying to stay within the rule book for so fucking long. And going in to the second round, we got a cut opened up over our eye and we're bleeding because these guys are fighting dirty. And what do? We appeal. We appeal to the courts. We appeal to the referee. Hey, man, you need to step in and do something about this. But nothing happened. So we've stepped it up. And now we got a court precedent to say, all right, motherfucker, you want to make it a street fight? We're here for you. Knuckle up, bitch. We are Tyson going into the third round. Thankfully, when we appealed to the courts in the second, it wasn't Mills Lane, but it was Schroeder up in Kenosha. And Schroeder saw the dirty fighting going on and he wasn't having it. So this time, we were able to avoid the nastiness that ensued in the third round when you went in and you've appealed and you've exhausted every other option. So we've got two scenarios that could play out, but either way, we are Tyson in the third round. We're coming out. Mouthpiece out. And now it's their turn to decide how they want to play it. If they want to buckle down and act right, get within the boundaries again of civilized behavior, we're more than willing to go the distance and make it a sporting event. But if they want to make it a street fight, By God, we'll show them what it is to go straight. We'll take their ear, we'll take their heart, and we'll take their fucking soul. Because in this fight that we're in, the stakes are too high, and we're not about to let it go to the scorecards. Knuckle up, bitch. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Appreciate you guys being here. Wow, I only went over about 5 minutes this week, so apparently, I'm getting better. I'm getting better. Yeah. So there was that. I appreciate you guys being here. I really do. I appreciate your devotion. I appreciate your tenacity. Because I am the Reverend, I'm going to pass around that little digital collection plate. If I have exposed you to any new information, changed your perspective, shaped your worldview in some way, or just gave you something to think about, you guys want to throw me some coin, I would appreciate it. I'm on PayPal, I'm on Venmo, I'm on Cash App, I'm on Facebook Pay, I'm on all that good stuff. If you guys want to throw me some coin, that'd be fantastic. If you can't, that's totally understandable, especially in the Biden economy. I completely get that. If you can't throw me any coin, that's fine. But what you can do for me, spread the word on your own social media. If you guys are out there on any of the platforms, let everybody know, hey, there's this fat, toothless cripple that rants and raves for an hour every Sunday. Just a crane operator with some opinions, but I dig what he has going on. He's a like-minded and kindred spirit. Maybe you'd like him too. Turn him on to the program, man. Post it directly to their direct messages. Repost it on your Facebook page, your Twitter feed, whatever else you got going on. But the main thing, above and beyond everything else, man, and you guys already know it, all of my Reverends Rangers, all of my sinner sisters, all of my prophets of doom out there, you know the prime directives, man, and I urge you to live by them. The prime directives, you guys know them. Be the signal, not the noise. Be the light in a world full of darkness. And as always, the iron rule, the prime directive is to be that strength in a world full of weakness. It'll make a better world for yourself, and it'll make a better world for your loved ones and people around you. Because without the strength to continue, none of this matters. The loftiest moral principles in the world being positively dick if you don't have the strength to back them up with force when they bring the fight to your house. And we're not bringing a fight to theirs, man. We're not looking for it. But a famous man once said, I'm not going out looking for violence, but if they bring it to my door, they will find me at home. Live by that, man. Live by that. There's the flag, Jeff. American Patriots, 1776, Mola Bay. Thought you'd like that. You missed it last week, brother. Appreciate y'all being here. Love you all. Peace. We'll see you next Sunday. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you. Next Sunday, man. Be here. Peace.